place your bets as to whether I go down with this board right there. So, Kate did a great job. All right, so this is teaching an old dog new tricks. So really the big part, migrating, request tracker, insert your web application there. So this really hopefully is applicable to any web application that we talk about. So it's not just about request tracker, that just happens to be the thing that I work on and we use, but htmx, that's the big thing. So how many people have heard of htmx already? All right, how many people have played with it? All right, how many people have strong negative feelings right now and they're gonna heckle me? Nobody, okay, excellent. It is a really hot topic on the web. If you just search, like people are really, I don't know, I really like it. I don't know, some people get really angry, so I don't know, we'll see how that goes. This is me. So on the CTO Best Practical is the name of our company, but Request Tracker, that's the software, usually abbreviated RT. And it is as an apology for the kind of bad title we're teaching an old dog new tricks. I give you a dog, which I did not know that we were going to all have dogs in our presentations, but this is actually the dog of one of the people that works with us, and the dog's name is Artie. RT. Get it? Yeah, there you go. He named his dog after our software, so there you go. He actually lives in this building, so you might see him walking around with his dog. So you could actually meet Artie at some point. You saw my picture on the website. It's just that part of this big picture, but this is what that picture comes from. So in the interest of seeing the big picture, this is the big picture of that one. So I like to go to the Adirondacks, so this is halfway up Dial Mountain, I think it was, in the winter. It's very cold there in the winter, even colder here. Okay, so what is Request Tracker? Has anybody heard of RT, Request Tracker, before? All right, so the first talk today was about branding. I'm working on branding right now. We're all gonna know Request Tracker when we're done here. So if you use Jira, it's like Jira, but it's not Jira. So if you have a negative association with Jira, this is a possible replacement. So, but issue tracking, ticketing, task tracking, support, all that kind of stuff. 100% open source, so you can follow along. If you want to go check it out, all of our code is on GitHub. There's also demo sites. Maybe I'll show when we get in, because I'm going to show things that are in the markup of the request tracker. And we have demo sites, so you could actually go people with laptops and go look at source and actually see what's going on. It's been around for a long time, and that's kind of the key. And one of the big things about this talk is how do you modernize something that's been around for a long time? And that's one of the ways htmx was really nice for us. We're on version 5 right now. RT6 is coming out soon, and that's where we did all of this work, like coming out like in the next couple of weeks. So you're going to be seeing a preview of that new release that's coming out where we did all of this htmx work. So that is back in RT1. So do we have any designers in the room? Because this seems like fits. The website's
going back to that now.
Yeah, everyone's so it was probably accessible, maybe. I don't know. Everything's pretty much what you see is what you get. Yeah, that's what it looked like a long time ago. So that's 1999. First versions. There was actually a pre-1.0 that actually was in use too, but this was like the 1.0 that came out. Got a little better. There's RT3 in 2003, so it's starting to add some color at least. And then we jump forward. That 2008, so that's 3.8, and that was a big jump. People remember the Mac OS 10 back then? Had like the gummies and stuff, so a few people nodding. And we started to get a little bit better, right? So this is a big jump. This is like whatever that was, like a 10-year jump. So to 4.4, and then we get into 5, which is we're on Bootstrap now. So pretty much everything's Bootstrap with some colors and things like that. So pretty much looks like a lot of other sites on the internet now. Back when RT was that, and for much of RT's life, every interaction, so you'll see, I'll get into some demos, but it's a business application, right? It's ticketing, again, if you use Jira, stuff like that. And pretty much every interaction was a full page reload, right? Like you do something and then you click a link, it reloads a new page. You do a form, you enter in some information on your ticket, you click submit, it does a full page. So the request goes to the server, it does whatever it needs to do, it accesses the database, it does an update, whatever the thing, and then it sends a full page back, HTML tag, all your header stuff, all your body, all that stuff, sends it back and jams it into the browser, and then the browser has to figure it out, like what all the content is. So as a user, it actually works fine, and actually when I get into the demos, as I say down here, browsers are pretty smart now. They're actually getting much, much better. They cache really well, and that experience isn't quite as dramatic as it used to be. You used to really notice when you went from page to page, and now with modern browsers, it's actually smoothed out quite a bit. So the demos that I'm going to do RT5 and RT6, not nearly as dramatic as it would have been with the browsers even just a couple years ago. So really the browsers are helping us, which is great. But we will see, I think, that you can still improve it, again, with tools like htmx can make it even smoother. And we just used to get a lot of feedback, like, oh, it feels dated. And we'd be like, Bootstrap, it's just like every other site. We'd feel, it still feels funny. And they couldn't articulate it, really, but that was one thing they're reacting to, is that feel, right? Because single-page applications, right? This is what they were experiencing when they went around the web, is that, more powerful JavaScript in browsers, advanced APIs, they let some of the newer libraries, React being, probably the major one that people kind of switched to, so that all the templating could be in the browser, right? And the reason for all this was that you could give that experience like it was a desktop application, right? You didn't feel that page. You're sitting in a window, you start to interact, and you kind of forget you're in a browser, really, right? Because it feels that way. And that's what people kind of started to want, because that's just what they were experiencing as they went through. So didn't that kind of solve things? Why didn't everybody just do everything in React, right? Well, it didn't totally solve the internet. There's still a few issues with that approach. One is not everyone wants to rewrite everything in React, right? It's a lot of JavaScript. It can be challenging. I mean, it's a lot of work, first of all, and in a lot of cases, you're kind of coding things, maybe not twice, but you have maybe two groups of people working, right? You kind of need like a back-end team now, and you need a front-end team. The back-end team is trying to create APIs that are returning data, typically JSON. You got your front-end team doing all the templating, the visual stuff, but then they have to interact because every time they do something, they're getting the data back and forth. It's quite a bit to wire all of that stuff together. Security can be challenging. You have to think about it on both sides. You have to make sure that people are going directly at those APIs, those are secure, but then all this code is in the browser, and all that stuff you need to be thinking about security as well. So that can be challenging because you're kind of doing things in both places. And that's all, maybe if you're starting something new, you might have all those considerations. But then you have legacy apps like RT that's been around for 25 years. Like, what do you do, right? You just leave it, but we want to be cool like everybody else. So enter htmx. And others like it. This is not the only one. There's many other people doing this approach. So I'm going to talk about htmx, but it's also an approach. So a lot of things I'm going to talk about, there's other libraries out there that are kind of doing the same thing. And it's more sort of the concept, really, in a way. So if you kind of get some of the stuff that I talk about, there's other things that do almost the same thing. So some web developers, they saw this pattern and just thought there could be a different way to do this, right? So the React type approach is all the templating is sort of in JavaScript, happens in the browser, and it's data going back and forth, typically REST calls with JSON. And they thought, what if you called an endpoint and it just returned formatted HTML instead of JSON? So that you have like a div with all the stuff that's the thing that should go on the page. It's basically pre-templated, it's already done. And then you just do a swap, right? You just take the thing that you were interacting with, that you tried to refresh, and just swap it out and take the HTML that you returned and stick it in there, rather than taking JSON, running it through a templating thing, formatting it, and then sticking it in there. And that's basically the approach that they had, is that maybe there's a way to continue to do the work, again, especially for a legacy application, that you were doing server-side, and just keep doing it there, right? And just return HTML. And that's basically what htmx does. And it allows you, it still feels like a single page app because you can stay on one page, you're not seeing that full page refresh, but all the templating is done server side. The side effect of that also is that if there happens to be a server side language that you like, or maybe you're already proficient in, you can continue to code in that language. And that can be any language that you want. RT happens to be written in Perl, but this applies, I know there's a lot of people, how many WordPress people are here? Wow, okay, right. It applies to WordPress, right? So you like doing maybe PHP, right? So if you do that kind of coding, you can continue to do all of your stuff in PHP, and then just return the HTML formatted. And I've got some links later. So again, I'm talking about Request Tracker. People have tried this with WordPress, and there's some really cool sites out there. And actually, we were talking last night about people have just done this informally as well. Meaning just you drop it in and just tried it a little bit. There's some libraries though too. There's some stuff out on GitHub. I've got some links later for specifically for WordPress. So basically, legacy applications can adapt without a full rewrite. And actually, it's even better than without a full rewrite. It's actually allowing you to reuse a lot of your stuff that you already have. Again, you already have probably stuff that runs up server side and creates HTML, and it's just creating endpoints to just send that back. That's basically the things you have to wire together. All right, let's look at some live browser stuff. So what we're going to do, I've got a couple of different browsers going. So Edge here, this is going to be the RT5 site. So I made it red, this beautiful shade of whatever that is, just so that it's easier to keep things separate. So just do a refresh there. These are running on my laptop, so they're both going to seem pretty performant because it's like a dev database, so there's really not a lot of tickets in it. And it's running right here, so there's no network latency or anything like that. So like I said, they're both going to be fast. You'll get the idea as we go through, and it'll just allow us to see things. So Edge will be the RT5, and then we'll go over to Firefox Developer, and this is going to be the RT6 one. So this is the one that's got HTMX running in it. Okay. So yeah, they look close, but if we the red, that's your indicator up there. All right. So we can just click around a little bit, and again, browsers are pretty good now. So I'll start to talk about like what's going on here, but this is just a home page, which is we call a dashboard. I'll use the term dashboard a lot, but that's what we mean. It's just you can create multiple different dashboards. And then again, it's just a ticketing system. If I click around, I can just load some tickets. It's not bad, right, as you click around. You can see it though, right? If you watch up in the bar at the top and the tab, like that's where you can kind of tell that you're getting the full page reload as things kind of go through. You get the spinner up at the top, because the browser knows that you're doing things, right? And when you get into the single page app stuff, the browser doesn't always know, right? So you don't get the spinner up there, and that's usually how you can tell. And then sometimes it's just noticeably slow, which is the other way you can tell. But again, not bad. Browsers are getting pretty good. Again, small system. So that's 5, just kind of clicking around. And then just for comparison, we get into 6. It just loads a little bit differently, feels a little bit differently, I think, as you click around. At least I notice it. So let's just click around to ticket. Page. So it just kind of has a little bit of a different feel to it. And when you get on a more loaded system, it's more noticeable. It's quicker as you go through. And we're going to talk about why, like some of the areas. So anyway, so those are the 2 apps, 2 versions that we're going to talk about. Okay, so what does it take to turn on HTMX, right? So basically, it's a JavaScript library, so whatever you do for kind of your building stuff, if you're a really JavaScript-y sort of system that you're on, you might do like a npm thing and load it up and do all that kind of stuff. But they support kind of old school stuff, which is I think how WordPress would be, where you just go grab the JavaScript library and you can just kind of bundle it and just stick that load line up there and it just loads HTMX. It plays nice with other stuff. So if you jQuery, you can have all this other stuff there. And again, people are using this with WordPress, and it doesn't seem to conflict with any of the other stuff. So it's pretty, it plays nice with all the other stuff that's in there. So basically loaded HTMX as a library, and that's the commit where I turned it on. And you can see that's it. That's the whole commit. Enable HTMX for most of RT. HX boost equals true. So this is going to be the guts of almost all the stuff I'm going to show you is you enable and use HTMX behavior, right? It's JavaScript, but you do it all with HTML attributes, okay? So this is a server-side change that I made in the HTML template that creates that body there. And I did it in Perl, right, in the template language that we use. And it was just an attribute that I added, 0 JavaScript. And that just turned on this whole JavaScript experience. And that's kind of the whole theme, and you'll see as we go through. It's all attributes that you play with your HTML and set it up and turn it on, and then HTMX runs in the browser and just kind of does all the magic for you without you having to write JavaScript. So I thought that was pretty cool. Pretty small change, and it was like magic, right? So what does that mean, boosted, HX boosted? So basically once your application is boosted, anchor tags, links are all going to do an AJAX get. So the JavaScript, and this is basically what like React does, what the single page apps do, right? Is they intercept the clicks, and instead of telling the browser, like just a normal link, hey, go to this page, it's using the browser's API to say, within this window, I'm just going to go do that get and fetch the results and then stick it on the page. And it just takes the browser kind of out of the loop in a way. And what that does is it doesn't have to load all of that head stuff. What HTMX is doing is it's just going to replace the body So it's just grabbing the guts of the thing in the bottom. And it just allows you to cut some of the stuff out. And again, it just gives you that little bit of a speed boost and just that feel in the browser as you go through. And again, that was one change. You saw it in HTML, not JavaScript. Quick win, the app already starts to feel faster. Like basically just turned that on and just started clicking around. And I was kind of like, wow. Like when I first did that commit, I was like, okay. And it just kind of worked. But it might break some things, and that's also what happened. So as soon as I turned it on, like the homepage kind of loaded, and I started clicking around, and then I found some broken stuff. But that's okay. So if you do this and some pages don't work, you can go in and turn it off for certain elements of your page, whatever sort of tags you want to, with kind of the opposite. So AJAX boost equals false says, just treat this like the old way. Let the browser do this. HTMX, leave this alone, effectively. So you can go through, again, Request Tracker is a whole application. So you can go around and test and basically find the bits that you need to turn off, and then you just go in. Again, it's just an attribute in the HTML, and you basically say, for whatever the enclosing thing is. So, for example, forms. There'd be a lot of forms where, for whatever reason, they've expected a submit, a full old-fashioned form submit. So we would just put the AJAX boost false on the form element, and that whole form that when you submit it, it would just do it the old-fashioned way, so it would continue to work. And that just allowed us to sort of triage what we wanted to do, right? A lot of work to convert the entire application, so we could go through and say, this doesn't benefit much from HTMX, just turn it off, and that will continue working, and then we'll go work on other stuff. So a few slides like this, and I know that's probably not accessible, the green, but I did put it in bold as well. So if there's anyone who gets hypersensitive, you go to an accessibility talk, and now I'm thinking about all the ways that I'm not accessible. Anyway, so this is just an example. So this is the login page, right? So when we first come into RT, there's a login page. We don't load all of the CSS and JavaScript and all that kind of stuff on the login page because there's just not much benefit to it. You might not even get logged in, right? So maybe you don't have your password or whatever. So we keep the login page very light. So that doesn't really need to be boosted. And if we did boost it, the problem is on the login page, because we don't load all that stuff, if you just click go and it just refreshes the body, the browser doesn't have all the stuff you need to render the site, right? So the login page didn't need to be boosted, and it actually broke things. So that was a case where that form on the login page would just say false. Don't be boosted, do a traditional thing, because we're gonna do a redirect anyway on login. So you're gonna log in, we're gonna redirect you, now you're actually into the application. So that's a good example of an area that we turned the boost off, and we're gonna leave it off because there's not an advantage to kind of boosting the login page. So it's not hard to selectively go through and kind of keep it under control. Okay. So when you get logged in, the pages that I showed you, the dashboards, homepage, things like that, now that's something where there was a big advantage for HTMX, like get into why did we do this, other than just kind of the cooler page loads. So the original dashboards, if you go like RT5, the way that runs, if you think about it, let's jump back and show you, what a dashboard looks like. It's all these different components, right? These little boxes are components, and this is all configurable, so people can go in and remove things and put new things. A lot of things are ticket searches like that. You can have all different searches that you set up, and then there's little functional ones like these. You can scroll down, you can put charts in and things like that. So what RT5, what it would do is it goes in, it loads the dashboard, your dashboard for whatever, and it just goes through in a loop. You can imagine it. You're all kind of, I think, pseudo coders, or maybe real coders, if you're in here. It's just a loop that goes through the dashboard and says, okay, what is on me? It pulls all those dashboard components, and then it goes and runs those. And it says, okay, what do I need to do to show this chart, right? And it goes off and it runs some code to do that. It probably runs a query. Almost all of them are some kind of query against tickets, right? And creates all of the HTML for that, and then moves on to the next one, and the next one, the next one. It goes through in serial, one at a time, and does all that stuff, gets all that HTML ready, and then jams it back to the browser, right? It's astounding how fast, when you think about that, it's astounding how fast the home pages load at all, right? You'd think you'd be waiting forever. What HTMX allowed us to do is convert all of that, so that what happens is you load the top once, we'll get into that, and then each of these components, instead of loading all the content, we load the box and the title, and then just throw an empty box at the page. So that first loop that goes through and says, what's on my dashboard, right? And it goes and pulls all that stuff. All it's really pulling is a title and then a blank box to lay out the page. So that can happen super fast, right? Because it's really not doing any work. It's not actually running any of these queries. So we can throw all that stuff to the browser, here you go, and that renders really quickly. And page feels like it's done. like it's just like boom, right? And the browser, the little spinner stops because just as a user, you're always kind of watching that, like, is it done yet? Can I do something? Can I click yet, right? And so real quick, that's done. And then htmx kicks in, right? And that's, you don't really see it, but that's where it goes in, and it actually loads the content of each of these. So not only does it feel faster because it, like, the page looks like it's done, but now all of those individual requests are sent to the server, and those can run in parallel. It's basically as fast as the browser can send those requests and as fast as the server can come back, right? So instead of running in serial and waiting this one, then this one, then this one, then this one, now they can all run at the same time. So let's see what that looks like. So come over here. Now what I did was I made, I put a run slow button basically inside my reminders so that you can see, because it loads really fast. Like you almost can't tell that what I just described is happening, but it is. Each of these loads, if you watch really closely, you can kind of catch it. Like that first thing where they're kind of closed and then they open up. Can people see it? You gotta really watch. It's fast, which is great. I mean, that's a good part of it as well, is how quickly it comes in. But again, I just put that slow one. But again, it just gives you that feel. And again, we were able to do this with htmx. So let's see a little bit how that works. So the way you do it is you go in, and again, it's an attribute. So each of those boxes has a div in it, right? It's just the contents of that div. There's a thing we call title box, which is just a reusable template, which just creates those boxes. So anytime you create a component, you just use title box, and it's a title and a box, right? It's a good name. And you add this attribute, AJAX-get. And again, this is an attribute provided by htmx. htmx then looks and it says, this is the endpoint that I'm going to go to find my content, right? To actually fill out that box. So that's the bit that we had to do. So you add that attribute to the proper div inside of there, and then you have a few endpoints that you have to create. And again, in our case, most of the templates already existed, and they were already returning HTML. So these were mostly shims. They were just small little things where we just put an endpoint where you could call it directly, because typically these subcomponents would only be called from another template, right? Not called directly. So there wasn't like a route directly from the web. So we just had to create like a shim. And then they were basically available. You can go through. So this one, obviously, like I said, a lot of things are saved searches, right? So we just added that little shim there that knows how to load a saved search, and then a little bit of context, right? Which saved search is it, right? So simple stuff to allow you to load that. So yeah, so basically this is the bit that I've already talked through. So HTMX replaces or swaps is the word that they use. The calling div with the result. So you've got that empty div that gets rendered, and then it calls, that endpoint returns HTML, and it says go to this selector and replace it, and it just gets replaced, and then the content pops in. So that's basically, I say all we had to do, but it wasn't that much. I had it working within like a day or two of like messing around with it, which was amazing. So it was kind of like magic. So this is also true, and when I say good design, and I realize this, I'm at a conference with designers, I don't mean that kind of design. I mean like the design of your code. But I'm with the right people, you're all coders. So you know what I mean. So I mean the design of the templating system, the server-side design, the way that we kind of section things off. It was made much easier because of sort of the good design of the internal templates. And what I mean by this, so if you think about, again, if you've all kind of worked on applications where your header, right? You don't like hard code your header into every page on your website. You have a template that you call, and it pops the header in there. And then you do some content stuff, and you have a footer, right? That's what I mean by that kind of design. RT was really well factored. Everything was basically in like a sub template, and that allowed us to basically be like, okay, anywhere where we need this div, almost always it was already in its own template. So again, it was just a shim to allow an endpoint to call that thing. So that really served us well. We didn't have to go through a lot of rework where we had giant pages that were like all like an individual page, like, oh, now we got to take this section and break it out and break it out. We'd already kind of done that just for good design principles, just to make it, there we go. Just for good design. So just as an example, this is the ticket display page. So this is the page that I've been kind of clicking through as you go through. So again, and you don't have to know the template language. It almost looks like PHP, doesn't it? Like a squint maybe a little bit? Yeah, no. Anyway, so you got a header. Tabs is just what we call the menu. I don't know why they picked that back in the day. I guess they probably looked like tabs. Maybe we go back and look at some of those little screenshots. But actions is just if there's like some kind of results or feedback. Again, separate template. other templates to show what happened or not. There's an actual div here, so there are cases where any given template does actually have some markup, but then there's title box, right? The thing that I mentioned, we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But the fact that these were already factored and then show summary, and that one, if I descended into that was actually, that has a bunch of sub-templates in it. It's all of the individual component. It kind of goes all the way down, right? So if you have an application that already has pretty good factoring, it's going to be made even easier because there's things you can just call and say, give me your HTML, and it probably already returns div, content div. You're probably already good. So yeah, title box was already a reusable component, so we called that everywhere. That's just our standard. So we taught that how to deal with HTMX. The saved searches, that was the endpoint that I showed you. Those were also separate templates already. And it was made easy because we could just make those changes to title box, and it already, like pretty much every component in RT already used that. So what did that look like? This one's a little bit small, but this is title box. So this is basically the guts of that particular template. And if you look up at the top there, you can see what we added is if not HTMX load. So the first thing I added was basically a trapdoor for anything that didn't know about HTMX, because I knew there was going to be things in RT that we missed, right, that we didn't get to, and we just needed that to just run normally. So the first thing I added was, if this thing doesn't know anything about HTMX, if it's not an HTMX load, that's basically the old code. Basically act the way you did before, you just don't know anything about HTMX, right? So that handles all the things I haven't touched yet, right? Those all go off to one side. This middle, this hide Chrome thing that was already there, it's another flag. But then this last one is if HTMX loads. Now this is the new stuff, okay? So when something calls it and says, yes, I'm HTMX, I know about this, do your thing, then I created a new template that's basically the HTMX load start, and this is going to be the wrapper, and it knows about these attributes. And this is we've already seen HTMX get. So I named, these are variables inside of the templating language, but I just named them the same thing as the HTMX attributes, right? Because then it's just one-to-one, like you don't even need to think about it. And if you go look at the HTMX documentation and you find, oh, I need to send an HTMX get, you don't have to think about how do I do that inside the templating. It's just the same thing. It's dashes for underscores. That's the only difference, right? So it just accepts all of those, and then that's going to create a div with all of the appropriate attributes. And just because this title box is used all over RT, it was just everything you could already know about HTMX or not, depending on what you passed. And again, in the not case, that was the default, right? Because obviously those are the things you haven't touched yet, so we just want those to just act normal, or pre-HTMX. So it was not a big change there either. So what's some of the cool things? Okay, great, we turned on HTMX, right? Yay, but then it's like, okay, what do we do now? We start looking at some of the features and you think about like, well, what would we like to happen, especially on this new homepage that we have, right? So jump back over here. So one of the things that I think that everybody sort of thinks about, especially when you have like a big page like this, is what about all the stuff that's below the fold here, right? There's all this content down here. As I mentioned before, RT5, it just has to do everything because it doesn't know what's going to be rendered or whatever. It's doing all the HTML every time. But with HTMX and again, and the browser's APIs, you now have a way to say if it's below the fold, if it's not visible, don't load it yet, right? So that was like, that would be really cool to do that, but I wonder how hard it's going to be. Well, it was like super easy. Basically, all we had to do was go in and add an attribute, HX trigger, set to revealed, done. That gave that feature to us all of a sudden. And we can actually take a look at, see, I feel much better about this because in our accessibility talk, we already saw developer tools. So it's totally fair game to pop open developer tools now. So if I go to the homepage, so let's do, I'm going to do a shift reload, right? Everybody knows that did a full reload, so you can see all the content. Again, this is the developer instance, so I don't, like all my JavaScript is not, all minified and mashed together and everything, so it looks like a lot of content because everything gets loaded individually. But that's kind of the point, right? All this got loaded. You can see it's a lot, right, as I scroll through. So let me clear that. And if I just click home, so right there. So you see the difference between a full page load that I forced versus an HTMX load where I just clicked. How much stuff just does not get loaded, right, from the browser. So right there, you just see the win, right? And again, in the developer instance, they're all kind of fast, but when you get into a production on a server, it's a big difference not having to fetch all that, especially when you think about network latency and all that kind of stuff. So right there you see a win. And then now, if you watch that screen down at the bottom, I start to scroll. There we go. You see the stuff popping in?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody see that? If I can clear that, do it one more time. So I just start scrolling, right? It's all popping in as I go through. Super cool, right? I literally added one attribute and I got this magic, right? I don't even know how much JavaScript it would take. I mean, I know there's the API where you can say, you know, if it's in the viewport and things like that. But I was just like, wow. This was on my list of we should do this because of just the expense of loading the page, and it was like so easy to add that. So that was pretty exciting.
So is it actually loading? So when you first were just seeing what's in the viewport, then like if you had a big image down at the bottom of the page and you scroll down, then is it going to download that image when you actually get to it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So,
yep, exactly.
So it kind of spreads out the
exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So it's a good question to elaborate on that. So the first page load is still loading the empty boxes, right? Because that is that first load. So there are empty boxes at the bottom, but it did almost no work. All it did was the box and the title, right? So that thing is down there. And the reason is because it gives it's sitting there with the div with that AJAX get, and then it's got the endpoint. It needs to know where to go fetch its content. And it's got the AJAX trigger equals revealed, right? So you basically had to get that markup on the page somewhere, but it's just empty. And like you said, if it's a big expensive image, or in the case of RT, a lot of times it's expensive ticket searches, right? And yeah, it just won't load, it just sits there until you start going, and then it loads as you get down. The other cool thing that's just baked into htmx is I think there's a little bit of variability into how soon you have something fire when you get down below, and they've done a nice job of anticipating. I've never been able to catch it, basically. Like if I put this, I made the run slow. Maybe if I put this further down on the page, you might catch it with that reloading indicator. This thing that pops up, I might be able to catch it. But for almost all the normal things that run, in like half a second or something like that, like you can't catch it. Like it looks like it was already there. So I think they give it a little bit of lead time. So they're like the viewport plus whatever something, and they just did a nice job. Like whatever lead time they picked, it seems just about right. Like it doesn't load things ahead of time when it shouldn't, but it seems to always be. It just feels like it's there. Like if I scroll, like you can't catch it, right? Like it doesn't. Even if I scroll fast, like things seem like they're just there the whole time. So to me, that's also really cool because from user experience, you don't get the like, oh, I start scrolling and now everything's loading and I'm waiting again. Like you never see it. It really feels like magic when you set it up. And again, it was just an attribute that I just added. So really, really cool. Yeah, that's it. All right. So next thing, thought, okay, cool. So we got so that that load thing. Next thing is, common thing for a ticketing system is, are there new tickets, right? So if I'm doing support and I just did a ticket, I come back, I'm like, okay, is there a new ticket, right? Well, all of RT back to, I think, I won't go back in the slides, but I think if you go back to that RT1 screenshot, this thing was actually on RT1. It's a refresh, and you could set, what you would set is a timer on that. And so for people doing support, it would just be like, every 2 minutes, every 5 minutes, refresh my page, are there new tickets coming in, right? Well, in RT5 and everything before it, a refresh was a full page reload, right? So, okay, we talked a little bit about the UX of that, like, oh yeah, it kind of looks a little bit clunky, but also think about the work you're doing. If all I care about is this top thing, maybe this is the search that actually shows new tickets coming in, and all this other stuff is useful, but doesn't change as much. But I'm loading all of it every time. I'm doing this query, I'm doing this query. This component actually happens to be really expensive. So the fact you're doing that every time, it just is, hitting the server, hitting the database, all that kind of stuff. You got this guy that you're reloading every time, and however many searches you have. And let me tell you, some people load their home dashboard. They're like, oh, I need this, I need this, I need this. You try to tell them, like, spread it out. Like, don't put it all on one, but people don't listen. So all this stuff you're reloading every time, and then imagine you'd set this thing to every 2 minutes because I need to see new tickets when they come in. Like you're almost like DDoSing yourself, right? You're allowing people to just kind of hammer your server as you go through. I thought, we should be able to do better than that. And I'm thinking, oh, now that we have htmx, maybe we can. So we did. So we got this guy right here. Look at that. Pretty cool, right? I was so excited when I had that. I was like, wow. Like, I'm not crushing our servers all the time, right? So how did I do that? How did I add this little cool little refresh button? It seems like maybe that'd be a lot of work, right? No, not at all. So, as before, that box already has an AJAX get, right? So it already knows what endpoint to go fetch to replace itself, to reload itself. And then the button, so when I created the button, there's another attribute called AJAX-target. And just like the name suggests, you can have one element target a different part of the page for the replacement, for that swap, right? So when the HTML comes back, you can say, hey, don't replace me, go replace that thing over there, right? Because when we click the button, we don't want to replace the button, we want to replace the div. Question?
No.
Oh, okay. You had the look on your face like you had an important question coming. All right. So with the button, you don't want to replace the button, you want to replace the content. So AJAX-target, and you just give it a selector. It's just a CSS normal selector. So I guess the other thing, and we were pretty good about this, but we did have to go in and do some things. You have to make sure you have good selectors all over the place, because htmx, that's what it's using for a lot of this stuff as far as targeting things. But again, if you were doing jQuery before that, you probably needed that, unless you were like really using the jQuery features like, just go parent of, child of, and maybe you're getting by with that kind of stuff. You need good selectors, unique. Again, we have things like save searches. They have an ID. It kind of lends itself to save search dash ID, and then it's pretty much going to be unique on the page, unless people put the same save search on their dashboard multiple times, which you can't. They don't listen there either. They have a reason to do that. Anyway, so AJAX-target says target this other thing, so for the button, and then AJAX-indicator it's the spinner, or it's that little checkbox thing that we have. So that also you can say, if you're going to show an indicator, basically if the load is slow and you're going to show a loading indicator, you don't want the button to turn into the loading indicator, you want it to be the target. So AJAX-indicator, it's basically going to be the same selector, because you're basically saying that div down there, you want it to use the indicator down there. So this is what the markup for that button looks like. So again, AJAX-get is going to be, it's the same get as for the div component, and then you say target, and again, there's your selector, right? RT save search 74, right? And that's just going to be on that div that's the body of the thing. And then again, the indicator is just, if you're going to show a loading indicator, do it down there. Don't replace the button with the indicator. So that is the markup that's behind that button. And that's all I had to do in my server-side code. I added those attributes, and I had a reload button. Pretty cool. All right, so those are all kind of get type things, like just getting content. But obviously, the other cool part about this is forms, business application. A lot of times you're submitting things. So it uses, htmx uses AJAX behind the scenes for that as well. Again, this is not new. We were all doing this, RT in previous versions. In 5, we used jQuery.ajax in certain places, but we didn't do it everywhere because it was work every time. You had to go in and put the jQuery.ajax, and you had to give it. I mean, the values that you basically gave to this were similar to the attributes that you use in htmx, right? They're kind of the same types of things, but you had to go in and put in some JavaScript every time, right? You had everything that you wanted to wire up that way. And there might have been clever ways to try to reuse or whatever, but in our case, we tended to have to go do, it was like work every time. Like, okay, we want to make this form, instead of doing a page submit, we want it to be AJAX. Okay, we got to go write some extra JavaScript every time. So HTMX, again, once you turned on boosted and the site's boosted, it's just going to do it for you. So again, attributes on your form tags typically. So it's an AJAX post instead of an AJAX get, because it's going to do a post on the form. And then again, target, because typically, so you're going to post the form with all of your data, and then typically you want to come back with an empty form, right? Like you're going to say, like, information submitted, that worked, and then you just give an empty, or maybe you show something else. Maybe you go from a form, and we'll see this on the ticket pages. Once the form is submitted, maybe you go to a display version of that shows you the values that were just submitted, right? So you see, like, okay, that worked, and the values went in. So again, it's the same attribute. It's the target to say, when this post goes out, it's going to respond again with HTML, and that's the result to then replace the form with the content. So here's an example of a form, again, with just a post, and that's just going to an endpoint. And this is the quick create. We'll play around with quick create a little bit.